Okay, welcome everyone to the Roots Ahead talk. Life after Westonbirt. I'm going to run through quite a lot. We've got sort of 50 minutes-ish. I'm going to begin this with some stuff that parents would want to see first. So I've slightly reordered it from how it has been in previous years, just to make sure that you're all aware of the processes. But what I'm going to run through this in this session is your different options. In 50 minutes, we can't go into that much detail with them, but I will run through what your main options are and what some of the main processes are. This is one of those really important ones where I tell you a load of stuff that you'll need to know. So if I can ask that you're not sort of reading books or fiddling with phones or whatever, that you're actually really engaging in this. So obviously, the most popular option might not be obvious, but the most popular option is that people go to an undergraduate degree at the end of school. Plenty of people don't, and that's perfectly valid. The elite university or course option is things like Oxbridge or medicine or dentistry or that kind of thing. There's a slightly different procedure if you're going for that. You've got international universities, and increasingly people are opting for that option. Could you please call any of your friends who are not currently here to tell them to get themselves here? Degree apprenticeship. Can you give me a show of hands in the audience? Who's heard about degree apprenticeships? All of you. Who's interested? Who might be interested? Yeah, and a few of you. For parents who are listening, it's a new option. And it's a completely different way in which apprenticeships work now compared with how they were, 20 years ago. You might choose at the end of school to do an additional qualification. You might do a TEFL course or sports coaching or a business administration course. Some of these would last a month, some of them would last 6 months, some of them would be a year. That would be in order to get into employability. Full-time employment is also an option. It's not super popular, but there are those who choose that straight after school. Gap year. I'm not going to talk about gap years today. The one thing I will say about gap years, and I'll say this particularly to parents, students who have gap years and then go on to university academically outperform students who don't, potentially with the exception of maths and physics. So basically, older brains up until the age of about 26 are smarter brains. Your brain is still very much developing until the age of 24, so the prefrontal cortex is still a work in progress into your early 20s. So your brain at 18, particularly if you're a boy, is not as academically ready as your brain is at the age of 20. Yeah. The idea that, I can't possibly have a gap year because I'll forget everything is demonstrably false. That absolutely isn't the case. Do certainly consider gap years, I would say. You might do a level 2 plus apprenticeship, and I'll talk about apprenticeships more in a minute. Miss Ash in previous years talked about starting your own business. I really, really, really wouldn't recommend starting your own business at the age of 18. I would go and work for a business and see how it works first, but some people have their ideas. I certainly have encountered students who've taken that. I'm going to mainly be talking about university, and I've got various different sort of ideas that I want to sort of throw out there today. But why university? To gain a degree to help you get started with your career is the old-fashioned answer. Higher lifetime earnings is generally associated with having a degree. 80% of graduates will end up better off than non-graduates. There is about 1 in 5, according to current trends, will not be better off having taken a degree, particularly because of the repayments to student loans. But for the vast majority, a degree seems to be a good financial investment. There are difficulties in the grad market at the moment. You might be hearing about that in the news if you watch the news. It's certainly on my radar that graduates are struggling at the moment. And there are various reasons for that. So we cannot guarantee any path is going to be the most profitable, but what we can talk about is general trends and principles behind the decisions we might make. I think a really good reason to do a degree And a really good thing to have in mind is that when you do a degree, you are going to develop a particular set of cognitive skills. So particularly for people who do degrees like mathematics, like physics, like engineering, particularly mathematics, we take that as an example. If you were to scan your brain at the age of 18, and then you were to go to university for 3 years and do loads of maths and scan your brain again, you would notice various trends in the neurological architecture that have been formed by doing really difficult maths. Right? That is the same for other degrees in different ways. I'm an English literature graduate. That's less popular than it was back in the day, obviously. But I was having a discussion with students a few years ago, and they said, "Oh, Mr. Mew, do you reckon you can tell the difference between AI and human prose?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And he said, "Oh, well, I'm going to gather a few examples, and I'm going to see if you can spot them." And I could spot the AI instantly every time. And he said, "But how can you do that?" And I said, "I've got a degree in English. I've spent 3 years reading books by humans. I know what humans don't sound like." Now, obviously, AI is continually developing, and I wouldn't necessarily brag that I can always do that, but that's part of having a degree in English. You know, for me, it was just an instinct. I couldn't explain how I could tell. I just knew because my brain has been trained on quite large quantities of literature. So gaining expertise in a particular subject area, but this idea of by the end of my degree, I will be able to. By the end of my degree, I will be able to. You might think about that from a purely capitalistic lens, from a purely, right, because I have these skills, these will be employable in these ways. Or you might think about it in a more humanistic sense. As a human being with a brain, I will be able to do these things with my brain by the end of my degree. Building a set of transferable skills, that obviously is with employability in mind. Now, the run through, and this is particularly what parents will want to know, of the process and the timeline, runs something like this. So, and you'll start this now. I say summer term, but there's no reason to not start this now. You're starting to research universities, courses. Summer term in particular, you are visiting universities where possible. There are open days and virtual open days. You will need to book into these. And I want to flag up, and I flag this up to parents as well. You need to look at university open days and see when they are. If you leave that until June, you might have missed them already. So from nowish, you want to start looking at open days. In a week or two, we're all going down to Exeter for the UCAS fair. And we will visit Exeter University, but you'll have an opportunity at the UCAS fair to meet representatives from different universities, and that might help you have a bit of a shortlist of universities you want to visit. You're going to start making long list decisions about what courses to apply for. And that might be, you think, right, well, maybe accounting, maybe finance, maybe business management, and sort of, you might be thinking within that region and starting to refine those kinds of choices. Knowledge gained about entry requirements is really important. You have to look at each institution carefully. For the vast majority of institutions, the entry requirements are as simple as what A-level grades or UCAS points you need to enter, and potentially what GCSE grades you might need, particularly in English or maths. But for some universities, they will have very specific exams. So if you want to study at Warwick, there's a lot of courses at Warwick that require you to take particular entry tests. Warwick's just the first example that's popped into my head. There are plenty of other universities that work like that as well. But the more elite institutions might ask you to do specific tests. You need to find out what they are in the summer term so that you can prepare for them over the summer. You'll need to sign up for them during the summer holidays. You'll need to let the school know about it. So Mrs. Cook, the exams officer, she'll need to be in a loop on that. Now, that will not affect the vast majority of you, but there will be a few of you who will need to be on that. And if you are applying for an elite university, one of the tests to entry is, can you read the entry requirements and do what the entry requirements are telling you to do? Can you click on those links? Can you make those preparations? Obviously, we help you with those preparations as well, particularly in maths and science. So math staff every year will be preparing people for particular exams. So we will sort that out with you as individuals. Summer holidays, wider reading and research into chosen courses. Work experience is really important. It's going to give you an edge. So if you haven't done any relevant work experience yet, I would be thinking about that now. What work experience can you do that might impress a university? Over the summer holidays, you will need to create the first draft of your personal statement. Now, the personal statement these days runs on 3 questions. What is the course that, why do you want to study this course? How have your academic subjects and studies prepared you to study this course? And what have you done outside of education to prepare? And really, that's basically what an old-fashioned personal statement looked like. It's just in 3 boxes now. So, you're answering these questions, but it's basically a letter of application. In the autumn term, you should rock up with a first draft of your personal statement, having been completed over the summer. Over that autumn term, that is when we refine, we feed back, we improve, and the UCAS applications must go off before the end of term. The absolute deadline is early January. No one was as late as that this year. Everyone got it done before Christmas. I think there's one student who got it done after Christmas, but you need to be doing that in the autumn term. Bear in mind, it's not much good turning around to me in November and saying, I'm really struggling to get started with my personal statement, Mr. Mew. You should have started that in August, if not before. Between the autumn and spring, you will receive your offers. You apply to 5 institutions, just so you know. I will talk about how we prioritise that in a minute. And then after that, you will choose your firm and insurance choice. Now, what that means is you choose basically your favourite university that you have an offer from, and then you choose your backup option. And the other places that have made offers, they are now off the table. You now have just 2 choices. Summer term, obviously exams and final assessments. That is a huge part of you getting into university, getting good results in those final assessments and exams. And in August, that is when results day happens. Please be prepared to come in on results day. If results day doesn't go your way, if your results are not what you were hoping for, we will be on hand to help you through that process. And there is a process called clearing, if you don't know this, where basically universities with spare seats will open up, will be open to applications. I'm going to kind of rush through this, but I throw this out to parents. These are the key staff. Obviously, that's quite a few names. I'm the university's advisor. Please keep me looped in. If you have a question about predicted grades, always ask me or carbon copy me into the email. Occasionally people will ask someone else, and they'll ask someone who's not in charge of the process, and that person will panic or be confused or give the wrong answer. Your predicted grades, just so you're aware, they will be generated in the autumn term. We do not release those in a formal manner, and you don't want us to. Occasionally parents will say, oh, well, why haven't we not had a formal notification of the predicted grades? There's a number of reasons for that. And one of them is that by having a slightly more informal predicted grade process, we can make sure that if you need to do some work to get a better predicted grade, you can do that work. If there needs to be a little bit of flexibility here or there, we can do that by having a more informal process. You should speak to your teachers about what your predicted grades are. That should not be news that I break to you. It should be something that you have a discussion with your teachers about. Hannah, Ash, I'm using first names so that people know who to email if they need to, head of sixth form, and careers. So if you're going through the non-university pathway, look, I'm involved in all of it. If you're going for a degree apprenticeship, absolutely talk to me about that. I'm here to help. But Hannah Ash takes the lead on that because she's the careers advisor. Imogen Morris, she takes charge of some of the academic enrichment and more competitive applications. So if you're going for an elite university, having her on your radar is really important. Hattie Franklin, is going to be our Oxbridge coordinator. She's not here this afternoon, she wanted to be. I will talk to you briefly about Oxbridge at the end. Mrs. Catley is the head of Year 13, obviously, and Mr. Travis, deputy head academic. I put art and DT staff here. If you are applying for a university course where you need to produce a portfolio, something like art or graphic design or architecture, they are the people who are going to help you through that process. So it's really important that we're aware of how important they are to that. Key dates I think I've clarified, but UCAS opens in May. September the 2nd is your deadline for your first draft of the personal statement. First person to look at that should be your tutor. And your tutor will give you some advice. Once it's been through the tutor, you might talk to relevant subject teachers. Once you've gone through them, that's when you send it to me. We still, and occasionally I will get a personal statement that, having gone through those processes, looks great, and I say, yep, that's fine, we're ready to go. Sometimes it will be the case that I do quite a lot of work after that. October the 15th is the deadline for Oxbridge and medical applications at 6 p.m. If you apply on October the 16th, they will not be looking at your application. November the 15th is the nominal school deadline for all applications. If you're submitting your application after that, you are putting yourself right at the end of term when everyone is burnt out, when there is a flurry of disorganised people. That makes, well, firstly, it makes life more stressful for you and for the staff involved. But secondly, things are less likely to be as polished as they could be. If all of you decide that you're going to give me your personal statements for the first time on November the 15th, I don't know that I could guarantee that I can process all of those by the end of term. So November the 15th is the nominal deadline. Some of you can apply after that. That is perfectly possible. But you all really, if you're writing your personal statements over the summer, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't aim to have your application off before half term. This year's Year 13, they are the best cohort I've had in 10 years here, and I really like you to try and beat them. If you can get your application off before half term, you will start getting offers well in advance of Christmas. And that is a really strong position to be in. January is the final true deadline for all applications. You can apply after that, but universities don't have to look at your application. April and May is where you get your final offers and rejections from university, and May or earlier is when you choose your firm and insurance place. Obviously, August we've talked about. I've got a list of school procedures and pupil responsibilities. I want to highlight some of your responsibilities. Over the summer term, you need to research which universities and work experience opportunities. You need to visit and go to open days and or virtual open days. You need to set up your UCAS account. You need to identify what the application criteria are, including exams for each university. And your wider reading is key. Your super curriculars, the things that you're doing outside of your mere subjects in order to make yourself a more competitive applicant. If you are applying for business and you have not done any wider reading on business at all, that's not a strong look. I will do a separate session where I will talk about some of the supercurriculars that you can do, but there's all kinds of wider reading that's available to you. Listening to podcasts, watching TED Talks, all of that kind of stuff. In school, obviously, discussions with staff are key, especially in the summer term. You're all going to have a one-to-one with me. You're also going to have one-to-ones with Mrs. Ash or the other careers teachers that you have to make sure that we're giving you the advice that you need. There'll be some applications workshops, and I'll talk you through personal statements at the end of term. But identifying application criteria, it's a team effort. But ultimately, it is your responsibility to know what the criteria are if you're applying for a university. You cannot take it for granted that every teacher is going to know the application criteria for every course at every university. It's absolutely your responsibility to see what they are. And if they are slightly unusual, such as needing an exam, you need to be on that. And that is an acid test that universities use. Students who have not read the entry requirements have not met the entry requirements, because one of the requirements is, can you read? Can you actually research where you're looking for? Okay. In terms of our sort of philosophy and principles, I think it's really important that you're all aware that advice has to be tailored to the individual receiving it. So what's true for your friend is not necessarily true for you. So if I speak to one person and advise them away from a particular course for a particular reason, that particular reason might be true for them. That might not be true for you. So I would be really careful of repeating advice that I've given to you, because that will always be advice to you. And I would avoid taking on board advice that other people have received. They might have a different academic profile than you. They might have different interests than you. Be ambitious. The purpose of going to university is to extend yourself in interesting ways. And playing it too safe and going for the least competitive university is not necessarily the best strategy. Non-university routes are also valid and they're vital. And so that word parity, we will value you as highly if you're going for non-university routes. Non-UK routes are also supported. They're a little bit more difficult. UCAS is the most streamlined application service in the world. You write one application, you write one personal statement, you fill out one set of forms, and you put 5 choices on it, up to 5 choices, and that's it. If you're applying in the US, you fill out a different form for each university. You will write a different essay or 2 for each university. Your future is your own. So you need to research it really carefully. If parents were in the room now, I would say, your young people, it's their life. Let them choose what they want to do. In my experience, and I've been doing this for 10 years, parental advice is really important. But when a young person is saying, I really don't want to do blank, it rarely works out well to try and force them to do it. Because you are all becoming adults. You're stepping into your own lives. Your parents might be financially supporting that. And they don't have to financially support a decision they really disagree with. So sometimes there is, compromise that's needed. And I don't have these conversations very often, but I've had conversations with young people where it's a case of, look, you can make these choices and have financial support from your family, or you can make those choices and not have that financial support. So these are complicated discussions. We're quite used to helping parents and students navigate those discussions. So if there's if you're finding yourself at real conflict with your parents on this, if you're having a real disagreement and you're really stuck, we're really happy to help support those conversations. And often that's been a case of a Teams call of an evening. There's been, every year I have at least 1 or 2, where it's a Teams call in the evening. I get home and you get home, and then me and you and your parents have a bit of a chat, and we work out what's what. And with the sort of more neutral adult in the room, these conversations tend to go a lot more smoothly. So do feel free to flag that up if you need it. Most people don't, obviously. And I don't want to be doing that 70 times, but I can certainly do that a few times. Studying something you can be passionately interested in for 3 years is probably a good use of your time. It's not 20 years ago. University is not free. It is not cheap. It's very expensive. And so things like English literature, which used to be really popular when they were free, are not as popular now that they're very expensive. But that doesn't mean they're completely irrelevant in the modern world. English graduates still have a place. What skills and qualities are you developing is a really important question to ask yourself. Because if you're thinking about entering a competitive world, you will need skills. You will need qualities. And qualities might be personal attributes. They might be employable qualities. What are you going to spend 3 years and a lot of money developing? So I talk about what cognitive skills and frameworks will 3 years of study develop? Who will you become in 5 years or 20 years? I often think about these things. And I'm talking to people, I often have this sort of sense. But asking yourself that question, what pathway do I reckon I'm setting myself on? Who's this going to make me? I would also say this: chance and minor happenings dictate a lot of what happens in life. The head of drama at, I believe it was UWE in Bristol, it might have been Bristol, University of Bristol. He's retired a few years ago, but I met one of his colleagues who told me that he was American, and as an American college student, he saw a pretty girl putting up a poster advertising a drama club, and he wanted to meet her, so he went to the drama club. And he never met her, she wasn't there, he never saw her again in his life, but going to that drama club started him on a trajectory which ended with him being a world-renowned academic in drama. He wasn't doing a degree in drama at the time. He probably never would have done any drama if that random thing hadn't happened. Your parents aren't in the room, but if they were, literally all of them would be able to say something life-changing that happened purely on a whim. All of our lives work like that. And that's one of those things in life that you need to be aware of. And so, life is a matter of making the best of where you are. You'll find yourself in positions for a number of very random and sometimes whimsical reasons. The question to leading a good life is making the best of that situation. I want to skip through some of these things because I'm kind of repeating myself a little bit. Big disruptors of the world of 2026. The world is changing quite a lot, and it might be influencing the decisions that we're making about our future and about our training. AI is the 5th industrial revolution. Okay? The last one was the ICT revolution, computer technology. The one before that, I believe, was electricity. The one before that, or the original, the OG industrial revolution, was the steam engine. So think how the steam engine changed the world. Think how computers changed the world. AI is likely to have that kind of an impact. It's going to be fairly massive. I would say in terms of universities, because the model of AI we're using, these large language models, they have a propensity that is built into them to make stuff up. And so actually having a degree is going to enable you to have better critical thinking skills when working with AI. I think a degree remains useful. The career ladder is a little bit of a relic. It doesn't always work that way anymore. I'll skip on a little bit. But you are going to be spending your working lives working with and competing against AI. The more you can work with, great. But if you're competing against, well, you need to upskill your humanity. You might consider what jobs are safest against AI. I'm feeling quite happy with being a teacher because I think that people want humans to be engaging with their students, with their children. I'm not recommending that everyone becomes teachers, but there are articles on this and you can do some wider reading, and it probably would be a good shout to have a little bit of a research into what you think the best future-proof career pathways and degree pathways are for you. But we talk about squiggly careers. There's actually a whole website on it if you want to look that up. But squiggly careers, basically, we don't start a job and follow the sort of the traditional like Japanese model of entering a company and working hard and slowly rising up through the ranks. Companies don't tend to promote internally as much as they used to. So what is looked for is agency. Agency means you making your own choices rather than loyalty. But squiggly careers also means, for example, you do teaching for a bit, you gain a load of transferable skills, and then you think, right, I've got a load of organisational skills, I've got good communication skills, I've developed this, that and the other, I'm now going to go into this kind of world within the corporate world. And people are doing these sort of changes all the time. There's that thing of you have 5 different careers over the course of your lifetime that you might have heard. Being prepared for the world of work is not entirely straightforward. Millennials, that's my generation, we very much chose values-based careers. We wanted to do things that were aligned with our values, making the world a better place, that kind of thing. Emotional maturity is playing an increasing part in choices. Compared with, for example, the boomer generation, your grandparents' generation, who, the mantra was, you just get on with it. Gen Z are actually making savvier choices in terms of careers than my generation. They are doing more degrees in things like accounting and finance and all of that kind of stuff. And of course you are. You have to pay for them. So you're thinking very much, what am I buying my way into? One thing I want to say about that with degrees is a degree is not, it's not like a lily pad. You're not sort of jumping from the degree then into that career. It's still the case that most people do a degree in something and then find a job somewhere. Right? That's kind of how it went 30 years ago, and that still is how it goes. So, I find it frustrating when people say, well, I want to work for a business, so I'll do a degree in business. Everyone works for a business. Doesn't mean that business degrees aren't good. They're very good, but you don't have to do a degree in business to work for business. There are skills shortages in the economy. The industrial strategy is being updated. You can look up the government's industrial strategy. You can read it. But thinking about where you're positioning yourself within those shortages is good. There are various shifts in politics, which might worry some of us. But how do you position yourself to be competitive? I think I've said that. Some fallacies, some false things that people think. AI is going to bring about fully automated luxury communism. To just solve the world. Well, the trouble is AI is owned by about 6 people. And I don't like any of them personally. And I think if you read up on these people, you probably wouldn't either. I won't need to know stuff because AI is going to know it for me. Nonsense. You will absolutely, people need to know things. You cannot have critical thinking if you don't know anything. You will work 5 different types of career in your life. I actually don't think that's true. I think people move within a sector, but I don't think people on average do 5 totally different things. I think they might work in 5 different companies. First year engineering modules are already obsolete at the point of graduation. That is nonsense. Bridges are bridges. Maths is maths. Engines are engines. That is just a lie. I don't know why people say it. It's obviously not true. 5 seconds of thought tells you it's not true. Degrees are a bad financial investment. 20% of the time that is true. 80% of the time that is false. Degrees need to be vocational, or degrees are vocational. They're not really, there aren't really any vocational, well, there are a few vocational degrees, there's not many. Medicine, veterinary science, social work, law, we could go on, but I would struggle to get to 10 in terms of vocational degrees. Big changes. I don't want to waste too much time on this, but combined subjects are increasingly popular because actually having that sort of versatility is important. Personal statement reform I've kind of already touched on. It doesn't affect you that much, but universities are undergoing a restructure, and that is something that you should be aware of. Universities are finding things a little bit difficult financially. They have spent the last 10, 15 years heavily relying on overseas students, and that market is becoming more and more competitive for them. So beware of university restructuring. Some courses are closing, some universities are combining. I would say that older and better established universities might be safer institutions. Those more competitive ones might be safer in terms of that restructuring. But no one has a crystal ball on this. No one knows what the future will be in terms of universities. I think there are some big cognitive thinking challenges that you face when you're thinking about your potential degree or life pathway in general. And one of them is, as a generation, and as a modern world, we have very, very low uncertainty tolerance in the modern world. The answer is usually a few clicks away. So what degree should I choose? Who here, if they were lost, would do anything other than look at their phone? None of you. 30 years ago, what do you reckon you did if you lost your phone? Sorry, if you lost your way, if you were lost. You might look at a map. What if you didn't have a map? You might ask someone, what if there's no one around? You might look at signs. Well, if you're at a crossroads, there's no sign, what do? You just pick a side. See what happens. You guys don't do that. You get to a crossroad and you look at your phone. Yeah, I bought a house last year. I've been asking ChatGPT what colour to paint each room constantly. I can't make my own decision about the paint. I have to ask ChatGPT what to do. Like, we have a very, very low uncertainty tolerance in the world. And actually, you choosing a degree or career pathway is a hugely uncertain thing. So I would try and find ways over the next few months and the next year or so to give yourself opportunities to develop an uncertainty tolerance. It is difficult to be honest with yourself about how responsible you are. We tend to overestimate ourselves. Life and career pathway is not linear or straightforward. So again, you're choosing a direction, but often we choose a direction and we go off in a completely different way. There are very few vocational degrees, and it is a truly adult decision, and it has to be yours. And it's potentially for you your first really adult decision, although probably choosing your sixth form subjects would be up there as well. I'm not going to talk for too long about student finance, but it costs about 10 grand a year, a bit less than that. Maintenance loan, you'll usually get about just over £5,000. Government expects parents to contribute. Parents are expected to contribute to the cost. The repayment rate is 9% of everything you earn over 25 grand. Now, that means that if you're earning a salary of 30 grand, you're actually going to be paying less than you do for your phone on your student loan repayments. There are controversies about this, and there are lots of things going around in the news about it. It's not fair that you have to pay so much when previous generations didn't. And you will, if you don't pay off the loan early, you will end up over the course of your life paying back much more than you borrowed. And families might make decisions around that. But honestly, there's lots of things that you pay a lot of money for. You pay a lot of money in tax. If you were to count up every pound that you paid in tax your whole life, it would dwarf this money by some measure. And as I say, for 80% of people, that doesn't matter. But there are different opinions about that out there. So what to look for in a university course? Teaching excellence framework is up there. And it sort of ranks how good the teaching at different universities are. You will need to look at entry requirements. That's an important filter used by universities when choosing which candidates they let in. I would say that you want to go for a range of choices. You want to go for one or two ambitious, possibly three, aspirational courses. I reckon you want to go for one that you're really not sure you'll get into at all, that you probably won't get into. And then one or two reasonable choices and one or two safe, one really safe choice. You only need one really safe choice. There's no point in making four really safe choices and one ambitious choice. If they're all safe, pick your favourite and then go for four that you might not get into. I reckon if everyone gets one non-offer, that means we've all been sufficiently ambitious. If everyone gets offers from 5 universities, that means everyone's played it too safe. So do push. Go for places, at least one or two places that you might get rejected from. If you get one rejection, that means you've been ambitious. Okay. And by the way, usually the most competitive applicants get the most rejections because they go for the most competitive places, and that's not a bad thing. You might want to have a campus or a city university. That might be a big part of what you choose. This little diagram here represents, some parents will make a decision of saying, nowhere in that red circle because you'll be coming home every weekend to ask us to do your washing for you, but nowhere outside of that second circle because if something goes wrong, you're too far away for us to come and pick you up. But again, different families structure things differently. So, all sorts of decisions there. Look at the specifics of the modules on offer and look at the modes of assessment. If you're currently not doing any exam units, if you're doing qualifications at the moment which don't have any exams in them, is it a good idea to choose a university course which is 80% exam assessment? Probably not. So look into that stuff. That can be difficult to find out. Yeah, you really have to get under the hood. It's not just going to be necessarily on the first page. You really need to do your research properly. Links to industry. If you are going to university, increasingly you want to be employable afterwards. So does it have a sandwich year? That will make it more employable for you. Earning potential, institutional culture, words of mouth, these are all things that we think about when we think about universities. These two article titles point out basically this. The impact of undergraduate degrees on lifetime earnings. Subject choice has the greatest impact. And there's a slide coming up that ranks the subject choice in terms of earning potential. Institutional prestige matters. Universities with a really strong reputation will give you a boost early in your career, but it doesn't matter as much as expected. Back in the 1960s, big employers would say only Oxbridge applicants need apply. They don't do that anymore. Prior academic performance influences earnings. Your GCSE results and your A-level and BTEC results will influence your earnings statistically, so work hard. Humanities and social sciences carry the least earning potential. STEM subjects are in the middle, and economics and business subjects are associated with the highest earning potentials. We always take these things a little bit of a pinch of salt. You know, your life is your own. You will be your own anomaly, but these are the general trends we saw. This graph, by the way, is from 12 years ago, but it still will be largely about right. I've put a link on the PowerPoint to a more updated thing from the Sutton Trust. We have interesting destinations here, and I'm running short of time, so I'm not going to spend ages. But look, we've got a Deloitte apprenticeship going on this year. If you get, I just need to skip on. We've talked about this. Yeah, these are the filters to entry. Your record of qualifications is the first thing they're going to look at. Your current studies, you know, you're doing the right subjects for that degree. Your predicted grades, the school reference, your participation in life outside of lessons. You know, that's your personal statement. Any extenuating circumstances, when the school is putting together our package, there is a box for extenuating circumstances. For the vast majority of you, that will remain blank. If you believe you have an extenuating circumstances, such as bereavement or illness during your GCSEs or whatever, please make sure that you flag that up to me, because I will need to put that in. I will write all of the references. If you have an extenuating circumstance which is particularly sensitive, I will need to know what it is, but I don't want you re-traumatizing yourself, telling me something that's deeply uncomfortable. You can defer me to another member of staff to get the information that I need. Parents will generally need to sign off on the extenuating circumstances as well, just so you know. I want to flag up overseas options. There is an entire world out there. I was very lucky to go some of the hospitality universities in the summer. And you can see what they're wearing. They are wearing suits to their lectures. Their degrees, they do hospitality management. Most of them don't go into hospitality. Most of them go off to work for a bank or to work in any kind of client-facing role. They work in the ultra luxury sector and all sorts of things. But the whole degree program is, how do we make you really employable? And actually, I would say, please take a leaf from these people's books. If you are doing a degree, what experiences are you gaining there? What links are you making? Stefan Watts is a really good contact. He's a parent at the school. He works with universities in Australia and New Zealand, but he has links with the international sector in general. So again, these Australian and New Zealand ones will often offer really generous scholarships as well. So although you have to fly to Australia, You actually might be paying significantly less fees when you get there. I'm not going to read through all of these, but it's on the PowerPoint. There are various links that I'm flagging up here if you're interested in overseas studies. Okay, I think we've talked about this, but it's an interesting idea in terms of, like, Western metrics are often around qualities, what qualities you have. Whereas if you go to the Far East, if you look at China, Japan, or India, they're much more metrics based. Have you passed this test? Have you got this grade? If so, then you can enter. If not, then you can't. We're a little bit more wishy-washy in Western countries. Useful resources. Look, the TLDR, the too long didn't read, is this. Personal statements need to be drafted over the summer holidays, and this will require wider reading. Universities want to see a genuine interest demonstrated through wider reading and work experience. Engage in relevant supercurricular activities and start this term. What can you do outside of your lessons that's going to make you be able to show an interest in this subject? UCAS applications should be sent off before Christmas. Students should have a clear idea about what they wish to apply for and a short list of institutions by the end of the summer holidays. Mr. Mew, that's me. I'm in charge of the process. Please keep me in the loop at every stage. If you have a question about predicted grades or a question that's anything to do with university applications, even if you think, oh, I need to direct this to someone else, I need to direct this to the office, nearly always you needed to have directed it to me. So please just keep me in the loop. Even if it's a case of, oh, I'm not sure about my biology grade, I'm going to ask my biology teacher. Cool, but keep me in the loop. Because if they say, oh yeah, I'll totally predict you an A, if I've not received that email, I don't know that. Please keep me in the loop. Students are responsible for their applications. It's your application. It's your job to pass the entry tests, right? Obviously, we're here to help you. I'm not saying you're entirely responsible, but please have that agency. Early applications, yeah, I've just about got time. That is Oxbridge, veterinary science, dentistry, medicine. Mrs. Franklin is going to be running the Oxbridge programme. We haven't got loads of time to talk about it, but if you are at all interested in Oxbridge, please make yourself known to Mrs. Franklin and indeed to Mrs. Morris. Mrs. Morris, sorry, married to herself over the weekend. But yeah, Miss Morris and Mrs. Franklin are really involved in the Oxbridge thing and indeed more competitive applications. You will need additional preparation for that. You need to be more organised, you need to get it in earlier, but you will also need to do more wider reading. Gentlemen. You will also need interview prep and test prep, okay? And that needs to be bespoke to you. So the earlier we can have these conversations, the better. Interview prep for medicine and all of that kind of stuff. Look, I've got a couple of minutes to talk to you about apprenticeships, just so you're aware of what they basically are. You can have a sort of a lower apprenticeship, a level 2+ apprenticeship in a variety of fields. But when we're looking at degree apprenticeships or higher apprenticeships, so a higher apprenticeship is level 4 or 5, and that's equivalent to a higher education certificate or a diploma, which is what you would get for 2 years at university. And it usually takes 2 to 4 years to complete those, and they can be in a variety of different sectors. A level 6 or a level 7 is a degree apprenticeship. So if you were to do a degree apprenticeship in law, that would be a level 7. And what you would do is you would spend about 6 years on that, and you would work for a law firm, and you, on the side, 1 day a week or 2 days a week or 3 months a year or whatever it is, you would be studying for that. Over the course of that apprenticeship, by the end, not only do you have the equivalent of a degree in law, but you have the equivalent of the legal practitioner course. You are a qualified lawyer. So if you do a degree in law, you have to do a 3-year degree in law and then a 1-year LPC, legal practitioner course. So it's a 4-year degree, really, to be a qualified lawyer. You can do that via an apprenticeship now. You don't have to go to university to do it. So these apprenticeships are super competitive. because you don't have to pay the outrageous university fees. You get to earn on the job. It doesn't suit everyone. Lots of people really want that university experience, and that university experience is a varied experience. The university experience in law, for example, might involve, I want to have contacts with lots of different law firms. I want to make the most of networking opportunities. Well, you can't necessarily do that if you're working for one law firm, for example. So there's various reasons why people might do it. But if you want to go for an apprenticeship, you want to look into that. These are much more difficult to get into than university, but they're a seriously good option. And they are in all industries. The application process usually starts, sorry, I've put the wrong year, in October 2026, but it's different for all businesses. Often includes initial application, online tests, and group interviews. I think, yeah, I'm going to end it there. Um, you have been really, really focused, and I've talked at you for an hour, so I just like to say I really, really appreciate this. I think we've got just about time for a couple of questions. Everyone's got any burning ones, but we'll end it there. And parents, if you've watched this far, thank you very much indeed.